World War I, often abbreviated as World War I or WW1, also known as the First World War and contemporaneously known as the Great War and by other names, was an international conflict that began on 28 July 1914 and ended on of November 1918. It involved much of Europe, as well as Russia, the United States and Turkey, and was also fought in the Middle East, Africa and parts of Asia. Millions of additional deaths resulted from genocides within the Ottoman Empire and the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, which was exacerbated by the movement of combatants during the war. In 1914, the great powers were divided into two opposing alliances: the Triple Entente, consisting of France, Russia, and Britain, and the Triple Alliance, made up of Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. Austria-Hungary blamed Serbia, and the interlocking alliances involved the powers in a series of diplomatic exchanges known as the July Crisis. On 28 July, Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Russia came to Serbia's defense, and by 4 August, the conflict had expanded to include Germany, France and Britain, along with their respective colonial empires. Facing a war on two fronts, German strategy in 1914 was to defeat France, then shift its forces to the east and knock out Russia, commonly known as the Schlieffen Plan. By contrast, the Eastern Front was far more fluid, with Austria-Hungary and Russia gaining, then losing large swaths of territory. Other significant theaters included the Middle East, the Alpine Front and the Balkans, bringing Bulgaria, Romania and Greece into the war. In Russia, the Bolsheviks seized power in the 1917 October Revolution and made peace in the March 1918 Treaty of Brest-Litovsk, freeing up large numbers of German troops. By transferring these to the Western Front, the German General Staff hoped to win a decisive victory before American reinforcements could impact the war, and launch the March 1918 German Spring Offensive. Towards the end of 1918, the Central Powers began to collapse. Bulgaria signed an armistice on 29 September, followed by the Ottomans on 31 October, then Austria-Hungary on 3 November. Isolated, facing revolution at home and an army on the verge of mutiny, Kaiser Wilhelm abdicated on 9 November and the new German government signed the armistice of the 11th of November 1918, bringing the fighting to a close. The dissolution of the Russian, German, Ottoman and Austro-Hungarian empires led to numerous uprisings and the creation of independent states, including Poland, Czechoslovakia and Yugoslavia. For reasons that are still debated, failure to manage the instability that resulted from this upheaval during the interwar period ended with the outbreak of World War II in 1939. He claimed that, "There is no doubt that the course and character of the feared, European war, will become the First World War in the full sense of the word," in the Indianapolis Star on 20 September 1914. Prior to World War II, the events of 1914 to 1918 were generally known as the Great War or simply the World War. In October 1914, the Canadian magazine Maclean's wrote, "Some wars name themselves." Contemporary Europeans also referred to it as the war to end war, and it was also described as the war to end all wars, due to their perception of its then unparalleled scale, devastation, and loss of life. After World War II began in 1939, the terms became more standard, with British Empire historians, including Canadians, favoring the First World War, and Americans, World War I. After 1848, this was challenged by a variety of factors, including Britain's withdrawal into so-called splendid isolation, the decline of the Ottoman Empire and the rise of Prussia under Otto von Bismarck.